Faye tells a story of doing a soul shop. He was in Southern Ohio, and did it all over Southern Ohio back in the 90s. Faye's real tall, and he was doing a presentation all over Southern Ohio called Suicide Talk. And he had a binder that said Suicide Talk. And he said he was standing at a McDonald's window, reading the McMenu and trying to decide what, right, the McMenu that never changed. Well, now it does change. It didn't change for 50 years. All of a sudden it's changed. Yeah. So he's standing at the McDonald's counter. He's looking up at the menu, and his book is down on the counter. And he said there was a little woman who was standing beside him, and she kept looking down at his book and then up at him. Down at his book, up at him. And she finally banged on his book. She said, "Somebody needs to do something about this." And he said, "I agree with you. Somebody does need to do something about this, but why do you say so?" And she said, "Because my 13-year-old daughter killed herself 2 years ago, and I can't find a person in this town who will talk to me about it. People cross the street to avoid having to talk to me because nobody knows what to say." And if you can use the word suicide in a sentence with a person who's a survivor of suicide, who lives with that suffering alone in a world where people do their best to avoid the topic, you can ease someone's suffering. You could also lift a burden of shame from a second-day person who's never found a way to tell their story. I was doing this in upstate New York, and there was a person who came up to me at the end, and he said, he was a chaplain, and he said, my first call to ministry was at a camp, and it was a rural camp upstate New York, and my dad gave me a pistol to protect myself. And shortly after I got there, I found myself sitting in my truck with that pistol in my hand, trying to decide whether to use it on myself. He said, "I didn't pull the trigger that day, but that was 30 years ago, and I've never told that story to anyone." And he broke down sobbing. If we can use the word suicide in a sentence, we can lift the burden of shame from people who have stories of hope to tell, but have not yet learned that those stories are stories of hope. So congratulations, because you just did it.